Welcome to Access to Analytics, the show where we discuss everything data and access to data.
Welcome to this new episode of Access to Analytics. Today, I'm your host, I'm Wannes Rosiers, but the most important is my guest of today. And I have the pleasure that Karin Håkansson has joined us. Karin is a data mesh consultant, already 1.5 years focusing on data mesh and data governance in practice to it. Hence, she has quite a lot of experience about the topic. And I'm very curious to see her view on how data mesh impacts data access or the other way around and what she considers best practices. So welcome, Karin, today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a great honor to be here.
A bit of a background about yourself, because it's always interesting to know where you're coming from. I've introduced you as 1.5 data mesh consultant. What's before? What's your background a bit?
Well, I've been doing a lot of different things, actually. So I've been a data engineer, I've been a manager, I've been a requirement analyst, a tester, agile coach, you name it. I've done it. But I've always had like two things where I have my heart or my passion. It's where one is, of course, data, and then the other one is agile way of working. So, and I think data mesh for me, it's really where it all comes together. So for me, it's really interesting field to be in right now.
It's probably from the point of view that you try to get your organization as fast as possible working with data and have a good orchestration, with also a bit of governance around the process. Do you also have a love for governance, or how did that enter?
Governance, I was kind of pulled into. I to be honest, before I started working with it, I wasn't really sure what it was. but then when I got into it, I got so excited, because I was like, okay, all these problems that we have had, we're gonna fix it now. We're gonna have like really good data governance, and then we can fix all of these problems that we've had. So for me, it's really, I'm in the right spot. I'm so happy to be in this spot, because I really feel that this is where I can do the best work.
We've agreed on not discussing your customers, so stay a bit more on the vision level or the strategic level. But maybe quick question though, what kinds of data do you often see? Because now you're talking about governance. Do you see quite a lot of PII data, and is that batch data or is it streaming data? How does that work?
Well, yes, and yes, actually. So it's I've seen a lot of different kinds of data, of course, but yes, I've been working with PII, non-PII, customer, employee, batch streaming, well, pretty much everything. That you just mentioned. So yeah, with all that, all the problems coming with that.
Yeah, and how do you identify it? Because knowing you have it is one thing, but making sure that you can identify this is employee data that might be safe coming from your HR tool or application. But what is PII data? What is your customer data? How do you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. But I think here, what you should have is some kind of classification framework in order to identify, okay, what kind of data do I have? And I think that's also key when it comes to access management, that you need to know, okay, what kind of data do I have in my data product? Or even if you're not doing data mesh, you need to identify, okay, what kind of data do I actually have? And there are lots of different kind of frameworks, but you could also just do a simple one, but make sure that you have some kind of classification framework, I would say.
Okay, the word fell for the first time, data mesh. Even if you're not doing data mesh, you said, but of course I know you love the data mesh practice. Me too as well. So sorry, listeners, but we might head far to that. But for you, because database is something hard to define, what is it for you? What is the core for you?
Well, of course, if you go by the book, you have the 4 pillars, right? So data as a product, self-service, data platform, domain ownership and federated computation and governance, where I have my heart. But I mean, for me, it's all about like, if you want to go fast, you should do data mesh. If you have problems for like delivering, I think data mesh is one of those things that I mean, at least the promise of data mesh is that, right? So if you manage to do it right, you will get speed. I think that's the core of data mesh.
I think if you call it like this, you've talked about domain ownership. A bit what's behind data mesh is indeed to place ownership on data and responsibilities on data in every domain. Hence, that kind of means you're maximizing your number of at least data producers and ideally also data consumers, I guess.
Yes.
You said your background is the federated computational background, governance. Any of the other three that you think, they are really prerequisites before you can start it, or how do these four principles intervene with each other?
I mean, yeah, if you want to do like really do data mesh, I think of course you should do all four of them because they're all connected, right? And if you take one out, it's then you will it will halt, or it'll be it's not really gonna work, right? The way it's intended, at least. But I think a lot of companies right now, they focus mostly on data as a product and self-service data platform. Or that's at least that I see. I mean, a lot of companies, they have the intention of trying to do all of them, but I think those two are the ones that you probably start with.
Yeah, and then translating forward, the self-serve platform is something you require to do stuff. Data as a product is probably already more oriented to, and then later on you manage access to data as a product. So if you enter a company, how does that work? You also start identifying domains and identifying data products, or?
It depends, right? I mean, where you are in your data mesh journey. I mean, if you want to start data mesh, I would say that yes, identify a case and identify a business who wants to be involved, someone who is excited about it, and then you look at that domain where they belong, and then you start and you it's kind of a show don't tell, right? So you show them, okay, what's the value of it, and what do they get, and how should it work? And together you build up this self-service data platform at the same time, and then you should really try to when you show the value of it, and then when you start scaling this, then you should really make sure that you also have the governance part included, I would argue, because you can, of course, you can start doing this, but without having too much governance. But when you scale, I would really say that you should really look into how should we do this federated computational governance.
Yep. Yeah, you were indeed talking, start with the domains that are interested, and I think that's a smart approach. And then from the moment you scale, you need to have indeed a federated computational governance. What are the main responsibilities you see there coming to domain data owners?
Are you talking about like a data product owner, or are you talking about, because I mean, the way I see it, you could have different roles, right? Within, I mean, you could have a domain owner, you can have data product owners, but maybe you also need, in the operational level, you need maybe like more classical roles like data stewards, and so it depends on which role you're talking about.
Probably all of them, but that might lead us too far. But what are the key responsibilities you see that in previous a central data team you might have not needed? Federated setup you do, and then where do they belong?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a more central way of looking at it, then you probably own you make sure that it's compliant, and you make sure it's secure, and you make sure that from a central level, and then you just push it onto all the teams and say, okay, this is what you need to do, this is how you do it, and just listen to us, pretty much. But then in a federated one, you give the ownership to the domains and to the business, which is tricky. Because then if you have a central team, you can be experts, but if you want to federate it out, then of course you need to make it more. You need to simplify it in order to move, so that more people can take the responsibility.
Our discussion is a bit shaped around the concept of managing access and managing data access. That's also something you see moving, and hence requires simplifying.
Yes, I would say yes, because I mean. I have a dream, right? So I have a dream that access management will be automated, completely automated. But of course, it's the utopia. It's the target, the North Star to go for. But most companies are of course not there. But the way I see it is that I mean, you can actually, if you think about it, you could probably automate most of it. Because today you probably have something like, okay, you ask for access, and then you have some kind of central team saying they look at all the policies, they look at the case, they look at them, and then they say, okay, yes, you get access because you have this purpose and you have this role and you have this. So okay, yes, you get access to this data and do what you need to do. But you probably can you could look at what does this central team actually do, and then automate it. So I mean, because probably what they do is that they look at the data, they classify the data, they see it, okay, this is sales data, and the person looking at, who wants it is a sales manager for Sweden. And if you're a sales manager, yes, you can have access to sales data, but you can only have access to the Swedish sales data. And so they give that. They say, okay, yes. But you could probably automate it, right? Because if you have that kind of information, it's not impossible to automate. You should be able to do it. The problem is that you need to do some work in order to automate it. You need to make sure that you have a classification framework. So how do you actually classify your product? Which levels? I mean, what do you need to identify? And then on the other side, you also need to make sure that your metadata on all your people, you need to have that somewhere, right? And it needs to be really good. And that's usually not the case, right? So it's but if you could imagine that you have that, then you can probably do it as well.
You're talking about the classification, but we were talking previously about data mesh setup and domain ownership. Do you believe it's sufficient to have a classification on domain level? Because you were giving the example of sales. Probably sales is one of your domains. Is it sufficient, or do you need more fine-grained metadata as well to manage access?
No, I think you need more, right? Because you need to. The way I view it in data mesh is that you would classify your data product, or actually the output of your data product. So. Because when I say data product, I don't mean the table. I mean, you have input, you have code that transform the data, and then you have output, and all of that is a data product. But what you would do is that you classify the output. So I mean, you would classify it saying that, okay, we have PII data here, or we have sales data, and we have I don't know, whatever policies you have, right? Or whatever you need to identify in order to match the access control system, and then you also need to identify, okay, what is needed on the other side in order to do the matching. Okay, so in this example I was talking about, okay, then we talked about the role, the sales manager. So you probably need to have the role identified on all the people, and then you probably need maybe the region or the country, and then you probably need not in all cases, but in some cases you need the purpose, because it's important. if you want to get access or not, if you should get access or not. And then there are probably a couple of more, but those are probably the ones that are most important. And then, and to match, and then you need to puzzle it together. Okay, who should get access to what data? And I think if you can do this through the platform, right? If you can do this solution with the puzzle, you could probably automate it.
I think trying to recap all what you said, you need to have good data about your users, probably coming from your identity store that is being used in your company. This is his role, his location, stuff like that. You need to have quality metadata about your data objects. So it's coming from your data sources or maybe in a data catalog as well. I'm assuming, but correct me if I'm wrong, that metadata should be provided by in the data mesh framework by domain experts, because they know which data sits within their data products.
Yeah, I would say a data product owner would be the one responsible for making sure that they have the right metadata about their data product.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then the purpose you're talking about, where is that coming from? That's the one requesting needs to state why he's requesting certain access, why he wants access, or do you see it coming from somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, right? Because you could say it's. But I would say the person that knows is the person asking for access, but that could of course also be a bit tricky. But that's yes, I would say because that's the person that knows what they're supposed to use it for.
Yeah, and then you were talking about more compliance rules, as within your example, only a Swedish person. A Swedish person can only access Swedish data, for example. Where is that determined? I guess that's no longer the data product owner.
No, I mean, that's probably, I mean, if you have a policy, that's probably set on some kind of central level or security. I mean, it depends on how you're organized, of course. But if you probably have some kind of, I mean, I don't know if you have a data privacy office or something, or if you have a security office. Someone who says that, no, we should not share data, or we should be a bit careful about our sales data. Everyone should not get access to that. Maybe you have some kind of policy coming from the security department about that. And then the policy comes from there. But the information about that you're located somewhere, that's of course, and which role you have, that's coming from where you work, or I mean from your manager, or I mean that's something that you probably have in your Active Directory or something.
Yeah, and I think you've identified 4 actors within this setup. It's the data product owner, it's the requester, it's qualitative metadata from your identity store, plus it's a compliance team. And you've stated in an ideal world, this is all high quality and fully automated. Yet it's utopia, you said.
Yes. Or I haven't seen it. Maybe someone has,
I do agree. The implementations I've saw have never reached this kind of level where you can fully automate everything, maybe a part. But of course, it's interesting to know, how do you see us getting there? So what's the process in between? If you don't have all that qualitative metadata, how can you still make sure that you're doing this in an as compliant as possible way, but also in an innovative as possible way, because you don't want your compliance to slow down everything, for example.
But then I think, I mean, there could be, of course, I don't think it's wrong to start with saying that, okay, but when you ask for access, it still goes to a central team, because that's probably how you've done it before. And then the data product owner, or the data product, is more responsible for when it's a yes, they get to add you, right? So or if you automate that last process, saying when they say yes, it's just, you just get the access. And it's probably like a good step to take. You will be compliant, but you still have I mean, it's probably still a bottleneck with the central team, but maybe that's okay to start with. And then, of course, it depends on how complex your company is. But you could, of course, also say that, no, our data product owners, they're so advanced, they know so much about our data. So they should learn also all the policies. I mean, most companies that implement data mesh are huge companies. And then it gets really messy. So that's probably not a good start. But if you have a smaller company and if you have really competent people, yeah, sure, why not? But I think, and maybe you can automate, like also saying, I mean, what I said is that you have perfect metadata, but maybe it's okay with like, I don't know, if you manage to automate 80% of it, and then the really like data products that have PII data, maybe you don't automate that. You automate like things like, yeah, okay, you get to see the sales. It's not the end of the world. It's not good, but it's not the end of the world, right? So yeah, I mean, you have to look at the different cases also, and where do you start the automation of it?
Yeah. Now we're talking about, let's automate where no compliance checks need to be made, just to speed up the process. It might end up you providing too much access for certain data, but it's not the end of the world. Do you see mitigations about that so that you don't end up in a continuous state where people have too much access?
You should probably monitor it, right? And that's something that I think no matter what you do, I mean, even if you automate it, you should monitor it. You should have some kind of monitoring of access to all these data products. And the ideal would be, of course, that you would have a fully you would have one tool saying that you can see all the access everywhere, and you can see how long they have had access and things like that. So of course that would be the ideal, because what I've seen now, I haven't seen, I mean, maybe it exists, but I haven't seen one tool where you can see all of the access everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So
and you were talking also about how long they have access. You refer to the past or also to the future? How long do they still have access? Would you make it time bound?
Yes, exactly. So I mean, both actually, right? You want to see like how long have they had access, and are they using it, and how long will they have access? Is it forever, or is it like end of the year and then it will end, or then they have to apply again? You know, so.
Yeah, and then previously also you were talking about data mesh is something you more often see in a larger enterprise, where indeed a data product owner might not know all policies and so on. From my personal experience from a larger media company, I always said, yeah, you have a few data engineers in your central data team. They cannot know every employee in the company. The same holds, by the way, for a data product owner. Do you see room for an intermediate solution like purpose-based access control, where data product owner needs to approve the purposes getting access to his data, but someone else, a manager, a compliance team, managing who can access which purpose?
Yeah, for sure. I think, to be honest, yes, I think all of these steps are good steps to take, right? So I mean, that's what I said. It's like, let's have the North Star where it's all automated. But then, okay, which steps can we take to move there?
We've already said a lot on where you want to head, what you need, qualitative metadata, both on objects as on users, centrally defined policies, which you ideally automatically implement. But you've also stated, I've not encountered this probably. So what prevents people from getting there?
Access control is so complicated because so many people has a say in it, right? And they should have a say in it. That's not what I'm saying. But everyone sits with a little piece of the puzzle, right? So maybe you have your cloud team or your DP office, and then you have your ethic team, and then you have your system team, and then you have your governance team, and everyone, and then you have the data product owners and the business, and everyone have their view on how it should work, right? And they're all right. It's not that, but the problem is that you need to get all of them together and start discussing it. And the way I have experienced it, that you discuss like different things because you're coming from different backgrounds, and it's even hard to understand each other. So I think that's something that prevents a lot of companies to move forward easy in this matter, because there's so many things that needs to come together in access management.
You were talking about the many actors being involved within this stage, all speaking a bit of a different language because they're coming from a different point of view. Is that also one of the reasons why you're longing for a monitoring solution that gives a complete view across all systems, because it also allows them to speak one language in the discussion?
Yes, a monitoring tool would definitely give everyone like a language or something to talk around and discuss, and then you would talk the same language. So definitely a tool would help. But then I think, the tool would also play a good role in like monitoring over time also, because you need some, things go wrong, right? And even if you have it perfectly automated, things will still go wrong, because things happen. New policies comes and or things just, you get a bug in the system or whatever. So some kind of monitoring is needed, even if you manage to automate everything.
Yep. No, I think you said already quite a lot. So I'm trying to summarize for myself as well. You were mentioning you need good information about your user, good information about your data object, good information about your request. And if all that comes together, you need kind of transversal some policies where you need to comply to. In an ideal world, everything is automated, but in a movement towards there, you can start from a central team, try to get more responsibility with data product owners. Maybe purpose-based access is something intermediate, because you do no longer need to know every employee, just your purpose, and the second check lies with someone else. So it's kind of an identified path towards it. Do I miss anything? Because you clearly have a great vision. So what did I forget?
No, I think you summarized it pretty well there. The vision is pretty simple, right? Everything just has to work.
That's probably the hardest part. And then you were indeed saying, I haven't seen this working yet, because, well, there's so many people being involved and they're all coming from a different point of view. And already monitoring might help to discuss to speak the same language to resolve the issue. But anything there that can speed up the process on reaching your goal, you believe?
What do you mean? Like if to talk?
Yeah, monitoring is already getting the same language, but is there process-wise or the tooling-wise something else where you can help people to move faster to your desired outcome?
I think the one thing that I think is to start talking, right? Start getting all these people together, even if it's messy. It will be messy, because you're not going to understand each other from the start. But if you start discussing it and start like getting people to see this kind of vision, okay, this is where we want to go. Okay, how do we get there? And of course it's messy, but then after a while, people will start understanding each other, and they will start to speak the same language. And then you have reached so far, because then people will start working towards this goal together. And I think that's it's a very simple one. And it doesn't have to do with technology. It only has to do with like getting people together, working towards this goal.
Yeah, I think if I understand you correctly, you want to move towards automation, but before you get there, as you have so many actors being involved, you need to have a good collaboration, and a good collaboration starts from communication. And there again, the monitoring insights are just a means to an end where you can start having the discussion, but it's really the communication that you require to move together forward, to come to a more mature state.
Yes, I think so.
Well, if you're happy with that summary, I'm at least am. I think it was a very valuable session. So thanks a lot, Karin. I think we've learned quite a lot, both about the vision on how to get there. So I can only express my gratitude for being on our podcast. So thanks a lot, Karin.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was fun.
That I can certainly agree to.